Now, Lil Tjay. I've been bumping a lot of Lil Tjay's music as of lately, especially this past week, and the other day I thought to myself, what's the state of his career looking like? Because he's been in the game for a little bit of time now, is a pretty established name in the industry, especially in the lane he's in, but from a career perspective, how is he doing? Has he gotten better? Etc. A couple of things to talk about here. So yeah. Let's talk about her. Now, Lil Tjay, I've been a fan of this guy ever since he got in the game, which was back in 2018. I found him through his song Brothers, which is the one that really propelled his entire movement. Before Brothers, though, he did have a song called Resume that came out at the beginning of 2018, which most definitely brought a lot of buzz and attention his way. Let's also not forget Pop Out with Polo, though. That was a big moment for him back then. Although that's the case, Tjay was bigger than Polo at the time, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. I think the thing that really stuck out with Tjay is the passion aspect of his music. Since day one, you could really hear that he had a lot of hunger within him. He did a really good job at channeling all that energy and putting it into his records, which that obviously had a very positive result. His debut project, True to Myself, came out in October 2019. At the time, Lil Tjay had already released a lot of strong records, so strong to the point where he was, even before his debut, in a really good position. I mean, he had songs like Fuck Niggas, which, at the time was very anticipated. I remember seeing that snippet he put out of him in the studio, rapping his ass off with the song in the background. I mean, you could just see that this was gonna be a very big moment for him, which it ended up being. The song ended up dropping, and then the music video obviously dropped, and it became Lil Tjay's most successful song out at the time. Back to True to Myself though, like I said, his debut album. The project did 45,000 copies in its first week, with 1,000 of those sales being in traditional album sales. I think the overall reception of this project was great. Lil Tjay was a very new artist in the industry at the time. Even though he most definitely had his foot in the industry when that came out, it's safe to say that he still was an unfamiliar face, a new artist who we didn't really know what we could or should expect from. Something every single new rapper faces, by the way, especially if they become known before having an entire album out under their name. So it's a plus and a negative. The good thing is people won't have a crazy amount of expectations for your first release because you haven't given them something to chew on that could potentially give them an idea of what to expect. But the negative is you haven't had the chance to prove yourself yet. That first album just pretty much sets the tone for what direction you're gonna eventually go in. And for Lil Tjay, he did have some heavy hitters before his debut though, which is why I think he had so many people interested in his movement when he eventually took off. And I also think his blow up was pretty convenient. That was around the same time when Roddy took off with Die Young, same with Polo when Finer Things was going crazy. Lil Tjay has always been mentioned amongst those names, so him, Roddy, and Polo kind of became the three young rappers who were dominating that specific lane. There wasn't a crazy amount of competition in that lane when he was first coming up, if you think about it. Not a lot of young rappers were fully rocking out with that style, and there was obviously a demand for that kind of music, which Lil Tjay managed to capitalize on. I knew Lil Tjay's future was bright when I put a friend of mine onto True to Myself when it came out, and literally the next day I got a phone call from that same friend where he was ranting for like 20 minutes straight about how impressed he was with the project. Lil Tjay I think shines the most when he fully commits himself to that hungry, light storytelling mixed with some melody style. He does a really good job at. Personally, and this is something I've realized about myself by the way, I just have a soft spot for that kind of sound, and not soft spot as in I'm gonna like it every single time. More so that's what I really personally enjoy listening to, and when that style is executed very well, it's hard for me to not vibe with it. This is something I think Lil Tjay close to perfected on his debut. It's not so much about the lyrics, let alone the storytelling at all. It's about the energy he came with on that project, the way he constructed the songs and embodied that exact vibe he was going for to a T. And this is actually something I think was missing on his latest release. So let's definitely get into that right now. Now, Lil Tjay's second studio album, which came out earlier this year, is of course Destined to Win. I'm actually not even really sure what I was expecting from this project. I absolutely loved True to Myself so much to the point where I wasn't sure if he could top it, which I don't think he did, so let's talk about that. First of all, the reception on this one was kinda sour. I don't really like paying attention to what social media has to say about an album since people don't really, it feels like at least, listen to albums like that anymore. Let's keep it 100. People listen in order to be the first person to get their tweet out there so they can get that engagement by any means. Anyway, I digress. But the reception to this one was kind of sour, right? I saw day one Lil Tjay fans talking about how they weren't that pleased with this release, and I actually understand why, because I wasn't feeling this one that much. The number one thing I didn't really like about this project is how Lil Tjay kind of strayed away from what made him blow up in the first place. He didn't really manage to capture that organic and authentic sound he had on, for example, True to Myself. And that's not to say that he can't go out of his comfort zone and try different things. I'm actually someone who absolutely hates boxing artists in. I really appreciate the crazy amount of ambition Lil Tjay has. It seems like he's one of those young rappers who's not content with being in the same place year after year. I can say that because he's definitely at least trying to spread his artistic wings and is tapping into different sounds. Although that's the case, it feels like he had a vision for how he wanted the album to come out, but it sounds like he left behind his uniqueness in the process of making this. Lil Tjay does actually have a substantial amount of listeners who tune into him for those R&B records, and judge it from Destined to Win, he's clearly determined to cater to the audience. I think the success of Call on My Phone confirms that, but also gives him the incentive to do so. That's a great song, by the way, probably his best R&B record, and he clearly has the capabilities to dominate that lane as well. This song is a really good example of how well Lil Tjay can execute that style. However, I think Lil Tjay shines the most when he makes records like Fuck Niggas or One Take or Hold On or GOAT, which I think is his best song to date, by the way. And the thing about Lil Tjay is he has so many different lanes in front of him to dominate. That can a lot of times be very counterproductive, because even if you come in the game and blow up off of a specific style or sound of music, most times, like in TJ's case, if you then have a lot of different lanes open for you to jump on, your bread and butter will most likely get left behind in the process of exploring those other lanes. In Lil Tjay's case, he's found a lot of success doing what he does, no question. For the record, this conversation is not necessarily about his success because there's not much to discuss there. Obviously a very accomplished young man. I'm more so, at least right now, talking about the subgenre of hip-hop and music in general he chooses to immerse himself in. With that being said, it looks like he made the decision to not fully commit himself to the lane he blew up off of, and that's what I think he kind of failed to do on Destined to Win. There's a very huge audience for Lil Tjay to gain through that Call on My Phone kind of sound. Where he excels though, that's a whole nother story. I think Lil Tjay is very far from touching any kind of ceiling yet. He's very young, so he hasn't really had enough time in the industry for anybody to count him out. I'd like to see Lil Tjay bring in a little more of his roots back on his next release though. That's what his base is really built off of, and I think that's where his heart eventually would take him if he ever reached any kind of artistic block. That aside, numbers wise, he's doing better than ever. I mean, Call on My Phone shot his wave up a couple notches. He obviously has, at least up until this point, a decent catalog that's still bringing in a lot of new fans, so he's doing very well for himself. I guess the question for Lil Tjay would be, does that humbling and authentic sound that blew you up still have its place in your career? At some point in every young rapper's career, when they've gotten a lot of accomplishments under their belt in a short amount of time, that hungry and passionate aura they were putting out gets lost in the sauce, which for Lil Tjay, I can hear that it has a little bit. I also think Lil Tjay is missing the perception of a run. You know, he's on a run, he's really doing it. As an example, Polo has been on a run ever since he got in the game. From Dial Legend to the GOAT to Hall of Fame, Roddy has been on a run. I mean, Antisocial in itself was a back-to-back project full of hits and runs. Lil Durk has been on a run ever since Laugh Now Cry Later came out. Lil Baby was on a run post My Turn. Lil Tjay, on the other hand, he's had moments of a lot of accomplishments coming his way, but has never been able to stay on that high. He just hasn't managed to build up a constant stream of momentum that's led to him having one of those runs. I think that State of Emergency was especially a break in that success and momentum pattern he built up for himself. Post True to Myself, I was not a fan of that project at all. However, I do recognize the intention behind that drop. It was a moment for his city. He brought out all the guys, okay, on that project, so hey, he gets my respect for putting his city on the map like that, and that was very honorable. All in all, Lil Tjay is still doing his thing. I think his overall place in the industry in his particular lane is pretty solid. He's far from falling off like a lot of people have been saying. I don't know what the hell you guys are smoking. I would say that he's stalling growth-wise, not really pushing the boundaries like I know he can, but he ain't falling. Not anytime soon, at least. I don't think Destined to Win made as much of an impact as True to Myself did, so there was a little spark that was missing from that project for sure. Personally, I'm still a Lil Tjay fan though. I just think he's really dope. So much more for him to give music-wise, and it's gonna be interesting to see how he keeps on progressing though. But yeah, the state of Lil Tjay's career. Any thoughts on this topic? It's been a long time since I've made a video on him, so I thought it was about time I did a little review of the current state of his career. Are you personally still checking for Lil Tjay? What do you think about his current position in the industry as a rapper and overall as an artist? Definitely let me know in the comment section below, and let's have a discussion about this.